Read the description, please enjoy. I spent a year on it! What do you think of when you hear the words horror game? Maybe you think of loud, in-your-face jump scares leaving you startled. Maybe an open-world adventure requiring you to traverse a vast area to find the items you need to progress through the game whilst avoiding certain threats. Maybe even a puzzle-based horror game while simultaneously avoiding a threat. Or maybe your mind goes to an actual good horror game like Fears to Fathom.
Ain't nobody here. What's good? What's good? What's good?
The NAF. The Gmod.
Oh god.
But the first thing I think of are the Little Nightmares games. The first game released in 2017, which was probably the second best thing to happen that year. And the second one came out in 2021, and was also the second best thing to happen that year. These games don't have in-your-face jump scares like most horror games do and rely on for any horror value. It has a very unique way of handling its horror. So far, I haven't seen any other game solely rely on this method of horror for spooks without the help of jump scares. It's called atmospheric horror, and if you know any other examples of games using this method of horror, then please tell me. I want more horror games like this. I know that many other games handle horror like this still. I've seen many tags of them on Steam, but those games still have jump scares, and I don't feel like peeing myself.
Hello everybody, I'm back. I feel it.
But Little Nightmares stands out from the atmospheric horror subgenre with its concept, art style, and overall phenomenal execution of every element in both games. Both games have absolutely no dialogue other than little calls they make in the second game. And yet it portrays such a story in such an interesting way, where you're able to decode the way this hellish world works through enemy behaviour and subtle details that make you keep a watchful eye out for more of in the future. Take notes on world building, moron. These games are so interesting to me with the story, the art direction, the designs. I need to talk about these games. I am the most passionate person about these games. No one else comes close. I am obsessed with these games and I love it. I found out about this game initially through didnt's playthrough of it.
Are you okay up there? Sir? He's not saying anything.
And I didn't have the courage to watch normal horror games because of how scared I was of jump scares. And I'm still like that now, but back then, this game intrigued me. Through the atmosphere, story, and designs, through little sneak peeks I did of the video, until I got too scared to continue, and clicked off the video. But in the end, I watched it in full, not knowing what to expect. I just dived in head first. And ever since I saw it, I was invested. Obsessed, even. It was a horror game that terrified me, and yet I still had the courage to watch it. Something unique for me. And when the second game was announced, I got obsessed all over again. The trailer showed so much. The monsters even more terrifying than the last lot. Combat was introduced, a completely new character, so much stuff. And then the game released, and it was even better than the first. Every element from the first game was scaled up to 13 in this one. And then over the summer holidays, the third game was announced, with a release date of 2024. Needless to say, I'm hyped and I need to talk about my love for these games, and why it's my favourite horror series ever. And if you disagree, then that's okay. It's alright to have a favourite horror franchise different to mine. It could be anything other than like, I don't know, freaking Rainbow Friends or something. In this video, which is way too long, I will go through everything that happens in both games and discuss why the horror is done so well in certain parts. I'll also include all the small details I noticed because the foreshadowing in these games are insane. I'll probably get into story in some parts as it also enhances the horror, and I'll be telling it from the perspective of a player who has never played the games before, even though I very much have. My name is Little, your 34th least favourite YouTuber of all time, and this is my nightmare. After you hit new game, it starts off with a lady. If you're observant enough, a geisha lady. She slowly turns to the camera with intense music playing and some strange humming. remember that humming now, it'll be important later. And then just as her masked eyes meet the camera, you wake up. The whole game was just a dream, the end. Just kidding. As you wake up and gain control of your character, known as 6, you'll notice that the controls are strangely realistic, albeit somewhat clunky at times.
Okay, I don't know what that was about. Up I go. Can I... Oh, shoot.
If you head to the right, you'll immediately see these strange gnome-like things. And they're called, that's right, gnomes. Get used to these guys and you can get attached to them because they are adorable and you can hug them and they follow you. Oh my god, they're so cute. You then go through a vent and climb up these stairs and truly understand the scale of the place you're trapped in. You are but an ant to this supermassive world. You crouch underneath a massive wooden planks and in that room, a door you can't open. And if you look closely, something walks past it, telling you that you're not alone. And as you enter the next room, you realize that something is off. Very off.
He's not saying anything.
This encounter is never explained, but a theory has been made on who this guy is, but we'll get to that later. This encounter makes you think though, what lies ahead? What could have been so bad here that it made someone do such a thing to themselves? You know you don't want to end up like that, so you grab his chair, which I think he was going to use for something, and continue. It's in the next room that you encounter the leeches. And by now you should notice the really good sound design upon hearing the noises these things make. It's so abnormal and like nothing you've ever heard, I'm sure. You enter the next room and fall into a pit when the floorboard breaks. You should turn on your lighter and realize that you're surrounded by leeches, requiring you to make a run for it. This gives you a taste of the real horror and what this game has to offer by dipping you into it without warning. Because when that lighter goes on, the panic and adrenaline is ejected into your veins. You know you need to run as fast as you can. This place is dangerous and you need to leave as soon as possible. After a bit you encounter the next proper puzzle, requiring you to spin this wheel and make a run for the exit. Really simple and, again, gives you a taster for what's to come. After a couple of rooms, you should enter a massive area where the camera zooms out and you see a freakish monster dragging a cage along a narrow bridge. When you see this guy, you know you'll see him again. Your suspicions have been confirmed even further than before. Something is wrong with this place and you need to get out. After completing some simple puzzles, you encounter the eye. There's stone children in the eye's gaze and your small brain should put 2 and 2 together. Don't get seen. Get past the eye, go to the right, and in the room there, the door will immediately shut, trapping you in darkness. The ambience slowly gets louder and more menacing as the door creaks open, revealing a terrifying creature with abnormally long arms, like you saw on the bridge. The door shuts behind this figure and pure silence ensues. The only thing you can hear is the breathing and snap-like croaking this little nightmare makes, further proving how good the sound design is. After this creature, known as the janitor, or Roger, leaves, and you do too, the first of a reoccurring event begins. 6 gets hungry. Now, to quickly explain something cool, the 7 deadly sins, the 6th one is gluttony. 6 gluttony, food, Starting to connect the dots? Anyways, you get hungry and this boy gives you some food, and in the top right corner, what's that? The Shadow 6? Okay, interesting. Again, not entirely explained yet, just bear with me. After a very long puzzle, you're required to hold a noose to get to the bottom of this pit, and in the next room you meet some familiar faces. You encounter the eye again and the bridge splits and you need to be quick and simultaneously patient to continue. And after making it to these stairs on the 2nd floor, you should find this eye. Pushing the button in front of it shows some cameras around the place, and if you go to this one camera, you'll hear some humming. Wait, that sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Hey guys, Editing Doodle here. So, when I was writing this and recording the audio, I only thought that this hidden camera sequence showed the stairs where you can faintly hear the humming from the start of the game, but I completely forgot that if you press the camera button one more time, then it shows you the Blade character doing the humming, which, to be honest, isn't much of a big deal since you see the character at the beginning of the game, but then it shows you the monster you'll face after this chapter. I'm blowing the character out for those of you using this video to learn about the game and its story with no prior knowledge about it, so that the reveal of this character actually has some impact when it shows up. And I'm just gonna say this now. Why the hell would you reveal this character here? This is single-handedly the stupidest decision in the entire franchise. Why? And don't you dare say that this room is a secret. No, it's not. It is located on the second floor and has this massive bright light shone on its wide open door. It is very rare to see something like this and completely ignore it. And with a game like this, with such linear gameplay, yet still with room to explore in some areas, chances are you'll explore these areas when you're given the opportunity. And this opportunity to explore further is as subtle as my hints towards this video's topic through my community post. It could not be less of a secret. Also, the puzzle before it to unlock this area is nothing special either. It is as simple as it can be, so it doesn't feel rewarding finding this camera. It's not a horrible decision simply having this camera in the game, with the first couple of slides adding so much mystery. So, for it being the stupidest decision in the franchise, like I said, it's not horrible, but it doesn't excuse revealing the next monster either way. They could have just shown the environment around it, where the second monster, resides. Showing it wasn't necessary. This chapter isn't long, and showing the monster here removes the surprise factor of seeing him for the first time. So when you do come around to seeing him, you're not going to be surprised. You're going to be like, oh, I remember that guy from the cameras. Also, I don't think it was the greatest idea to include the lady in this sequence of camera slides. They could have done so much more with it. That's why. They could have done so much more with just the camera in general. And it's not often that this franchise comes across missed potential, which is why it's so disappointing when it does come around. I'll talk more about what they could have done with the camera near the end when we've covered the first game, but I'm just disappointed. So overall, missed potential to do some really cool stuff, and I'm just not a fan of how this idea was executed. Anyways, you enter this room, and for the first time it's a room with comforting lighting, but in this room there's a picture, one of a very familiar looking character. From this picture alone, we can tell that this is the janitor's room. He doesn't go into the room at all, so there's no panic, but in an early trailer for the game when it was once called Hunger, it shows that Roger entering the room was planned on happening, but was clearly scrapped through development. Also, fun fact, the game was renamed to Little Nightmares because it was really difficult to find this game by searching up Hunger Game, for obvious reasons. After you leave, you call the elevator with the monkey from Toy Story, and you get hungry. Luckily, there's a cage with some food in it. The music here you'll get very familiar with as we progress through the video and get to the second game. As you eat the food, the lights begin to flicker and wait a minute, it's that Shadow 6 again, huh? That's weird. And then you encounter Mr. Tickle. Also, random fact break, 6 is apparently 9 years old. I honestly thought it was like Ben 10, where Ben 10 is 10 and 6 is 6. That would have made perfect sense. But imagine experiencing this stuff at 9 or even 6 years old. I'd honestly just cry at the sight of a single leech. You fall for the oldest trick in the book. You walked right into that one. Would have been more subtle to have a sign next to the cage saying, free food, come eat. Like, honestly, sis, couldn't you have just brought that food out of the cage to eat, you stupid child? You spawn again in the cage, and you need to escape by using the cage of another child and fling yourself off this lever, or whatever it is, to get through the door. There is no way to help these kids. You don't know why they're here, or hell, why you're here, but you need to continue nonetheless. After making it out, you find Roger, covering the children in cloth to make body bags and sending them off, hanging the body bags by a hook along this rail. The first step in how this disgusting world works, but I'll explain more about it later. There seems to be some cloth on the floor, not making any noise when you walk on it, but when you step on the floorboards, he begins to investigate. The trick is to keep to the cloth and crouch into the other room. There you need to turn the crank and slide into the trapdoor, alerting Roger and requiring you both to get very close to each other. And that won't be for the first time, so don't worry, you'll get used to him. Now that we got up close and personal with old man Jeremy, let's talk about his design. He wears a hat over his bowler ball head and his skin has seemingly melted, folding over his eyes, causing his blindness. Look at his little legs though, he's so silly. He's got some pretty long arms, but those legs, he's a tiny sucker. Pretty terrifying stuff. Speaking of terrifying, you make it to a room with a lot of shoes in them. Absolutely disgusting! As you jump into the pile of shoes to make it to the other suitcases, the shoes begin to rumble and something chases you. You never actually see what chases you, but that makes it even scarier because you don't know what it looks like. You don't know what happens when it catches you. Where does it take you? These questions rush through your head as panic courses through your veins. These questions rush through your head as panic courses through your veins as you slowly run away, narrowly escaping this beast. Fear of the unknown at its finest. I'll get back to this room later though, because as unimportant as this room seems, it is very important, showing the impacts of the overarching story. After that, you encounter a familiar area. Oh my god, run! This is the first real chase with Roger, requiring you to think fast and react to your obstacles and surroundings very quickly. You make your way to the elevator, and slowly, it travels upwards. This scene is phenomenal at executing tension. Roger feels around the area, and you could hide in a few places, but the intended area is in this crate. Upon first playthrough, you have no clue whether he's going to find you. Not to mention that this elevator takes a bloody long time to reach its destination, and in that time, you'll be sitting there in that crate so helplessly as Roger tries to sniff you out and find you.
He went in that room. I don't know what he's doing, but we out here.
You continue underneath the floorboards as Roger gets distracted by some gnomes, and you should then distract Old Man Jeremy with the monkey from Toy Story. Also here, you get a feel for how far this guy can actually reach, stretching his arm across this entire drawer. As you enter the next room, holy crap, he can climb now. Now, you have no clue where he is, and you know how easily he can traverse this area despite being blind. As you break into the next room, your clumsy idiot self knocks over these clocks, and it doesn't alert. Oh wait, never mind. Wait, why were there shoes up there? Here you're required to wait for the clocks to go berserk and use one of the shoes to open its door whilst Roger covers his ears in pain. He chases you and you escape. Oh, never mind. Here you're required to sneak past Roger without alerting him to your presence because he will reach for you if you make any noise. Here the AI can get a bit funky though. Like, you might get to the other side after alerting him, not move at all, and he still gets you, somehow knowing where you are. That doesn't make any sense. This guy's blind. Anyways, in this room, there's the crank that you need, but in order to get out, you need to turn on the TV, and it plays this creepy as hell song. Remember this song though, as it will come up later. It alerts Roger and he comes into the room and he caresses the TV. It seems comforting, hypnotic almost, like it's trying to control him, but it's not got there yet. Remember this too, it will be important later. You then crank that crank and the piano rises. After a puzzle and dodging a very narrow fall, you enter the vents, the only safe place in this hellish night. Oh, never mind, Roger still wants to capture you. After escaping the vents, another chase ensues and you escape through this room with the door not entirely shut thanks to this cage in the way. Roger then reaches in trying to grab you. The only thing you can do is tear the cage apart. The door crushes the cage, the lights flicker, Roger screams in pain on the other side, sounding like a gust of wind as his limbs are cut clean off, leaving them with disgusting wobble physics as you move them around. Roger is dead. Whilst giving Roger the finger as he no longer has any, you finally leave. An incredible introduction to this game to say the least, unnerving you and slowly immersing you with this game's terrifying wonders and creatures, and it only gets more unhinged after this. Although I must say, this is probably the weakest part of the two games. It is very slow and really isn't all that engaging, even with the leeches. But one thing quite stupid, another one of my gripes with this chapter, involves Roger's AI, primarily when he knows where you are or not. During some scripted chases, like in the clock room or the last chase before the hand guillotine, naturally some people decided to hide from him, as the clocks blocked the noise, so how would Roger know you were there? Of course, understanding that you need to run is normally understood after getting caught once, so it isn't a huge deal, so to create tension it does it well, forcing you to run with nowhere to hide, but there should be some indicator that you need to run. This guy is blind after all, and I don't think his supersonic hearing is going to tell him that you're in this corner, dead silent, with those clocks deafening him at the same time. And you can't defend this by saying that his sense of smell tells him where you are, because if so, then why doesn't he find me easier a lot earlier in the game? Wouldn't he just know exactly where I am all of the time if his sense of smell told him that? Why would it only tell him here and not anywhere else? Does it have a bloody switch for when it works or not? Does it know sometimes work? It doesn't make any sense. Of course, this game doesn't have to be entirely realistic. I mean, the dystopian concept and world it's set in is alien enough. But this just doesn't make any sense at all. In no game would this make any sense. They could have been a bit more creative with how Roger tries to catch you than just make loud sound, he chase you, now run. It still works though, but even then, still gets a bit stale. Like, the clock room was actually really clever, despite the weird AI. But what if you were in a room full of leeches and you had Roger chasing you too? Maybe in the room before the final fight, with some changes made to the room, it could fit in. Maybe the leeches attack Roger at the legs before you slide under the vents, slowing him down. What if, as you were doing the fight, a few leeches crawl under the gap and you need to keep moving the entire time to avoid them? It would make things more tense, which was definitely needed for this boss fight. It felt like no work but all payoff. Not saying this game needs more difficult parts, because it relies on the gameplay to tell its story and relies on the atmosphere to make you feel emotions. Therefore, it doesn't need difficulty to make it more fun and more immersive. But I still think it's an interesting idea. Overall, a fairly flawed first chapter, but if this chapter got me invested in the entire franchise, then it still has to be pretty damn good.
He's doing what we have to do.
This chapter starts off with you travelling further using the body bags. Now, right off the bat, I have a question. How are the body bags still going on the hooks? Because we know that Roger supplies this place with the bodies and sends the body bags along the hooks. Let's take the last body bag. The last body bag he sent was the one at the beginning, after he started chasing us throughout the chapter. Meaning that you're trying to tell me that the speed we moved at in this chapter, all that waiting, puzzle solving, meant that we were moving so fast that we beat this last hook to this specific area. We were so fast that there are still hooks coming along the conveyor? Unless someone else is supplying these body bags too. They don't touch on that or explain it, but I wanted to mention it because it doesn't make sense. Holding onto the bag, you see another monster, smoking because none of the bad things in this universe have disappeared. What's next? Six loses her breath, but thank God she found a vape. When you let go, Six gets hungry and there seems to be no food around. Other than... Damn. I really wanted a flushed away sequel. Here you can see that Six's hunger is intensifying. She is doing whatever she can do to survive. She is desperate. She isn't cold-hearted though. Just another victim in this dark world, trying her hardest to survive. Right? Shadow Six is back again. Every time she eats, this figure appears. Right. Interesting. After eating Remy, you enter the kitchen. Six. Could you have just held back your hunger? For 5 seconds! And it's here that you see what the body bags are for. What the children are for. You see what happens to them after they're sent off. And you see what abomination is helping with it. This masked monster with sunken eyes and a misshapen mouth, using these body bags and preparing it for something. When the chef is done tenderizing his meat, you enter a bigger area of the kitchen and you need to go get a key to leave. Now, before I go any further, I'd just like to point out some small details I like here, all involving what happens when you get caught by this beast. Depending on where you get caught, the chef will do different things to you. For example, he might put you on the chopping board, and it cuts to black before his knife reaches your body. He might toss you in the oven, boil you alive, throw you in the meat grinder, stuff you inside a fish, which showcases some of the most disgusting noises I have ever heard in any game ever. It's pretty cool honestly, not another monster in the series does this. After climbing up the drawers and going to the left, you'll encounter a double toilet, one for each butt cheek I guess. Across the hall, a pitch black room with another silhouette in the bed, sleeping. It can't be the chef, he's down there cooking up some nasty crap. This is another monster, it has to be. And on the left there's the key that you need. And as you get it off, the silhouette wakes, turns the lights on, and it's another chef? Yeah. They're twin chefs, so that's one more problem to add to the list. And after adding some more meat across to the vent, and then after a narrow escape from the chef, he begins beating the meat again. My man, it is already cut, quit it! Oh, the key's on there though. You distract that melted moron with a meat grinder, although the chef's pretty good at that himself. Unlock the door and escape through the garbage chute, and underneath the floor you can see the chefs cleaning. Well, at least they practice basic hygiene, although clearly not their own. After turning on the conveyor, you climb up the plate and ride the hooks to the next room. The chef blocks where the hooks continue to move, forcing you to jump down and run as the other chef chases you down. You can escape again by the hooks as the chefs try to throw bottles at you, ending the chapter. An improvement over the first chapter, the heartbeats paired with the silence of the chefs staring at you before they make their guttural scream and chase after you, add to the feeling of dread knowing that they've seen you. Although, generally, this chapter's horror is slightly weaker, as you are put in a more brighter lit up area, making up for it by putting you in a more disturbing environment, surrounded by slaughtered children and school food. But then again, horror is weighed down a lot more by the chef's stupid AI. These guys aren't blind unlike the last guy, but they might as well have been so, which makes it so much more funnier when they see you, and you hide, and then they don't even chase you, and then they're like, where'd they go? Oh well. It's very funny from a gameplay standpoint, but from a horror game standpoint? It ruins any tension created by trying to sneak past them, as you can just escape them way too easily. Plus, that chase at the end is way too short. The only scary bit there is the chef bursting through the door. Chases on their own though don't get stale, as they aren't frequent or forced, and the introduction to the second chef was really good. And I haven't been talking much about the sound design, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to stop, but the monsters' voices are done so well, major props to the voice actors. So overall, a better chapter than the last with how it plays out in the general atmosphere, with it being a lot more consistent and disturbing, but overall it is much less scary and is the most anticlimactic chapter in both games by far, leaving you wishing that you got more out of this chapter. This chapter starts on this massive tube thing which is here for gameplay convenience, and after climbing up the ladder which is also here for gameplay convenience, we are introduced to the coolest shot in the entire game. The lighting and the sudden realization that this is the first and only time in both games that we actually see sunlight. The music ascends and gives this eerie tune as the clones of my geography teacher all waddle onto the prison we've been trying to escape. Which I should now mention is called the Moor. Splatoon reference? And from what you've seen before, tiny leeches, one janitor, two chefs, this chapter immediately scales it up to the extreme and shows hundreds of these obese beasts. This shot is so good at establishing what's to come in this chapter, and once again shows the immense scale of this place and what we're facing. You continue forward and get a closer look at... Actually, I've run out of insults to call these guys. I'm just going to call them by their actual names. The guests. You see the guests and this geisha lady. From the beginning? Yeah, you getting it now? It's coming full circle, innit? You climb over some lights and you realize what the guests are here for. All the food prepared by the chefs, none of it is going to waste. I mean, it kind of does, but I'll touch on that in a second. The final piece on how this world works. The children are captured by Roger and sent to the chefs to be slaughtered and prepared for the guests to devour. Alright, knowing that now, let's look at the shoe room. These shoes are clearly too big to be Six's, or any of the children's in fact, but I feel like it is heavily implied that these shoes are from the people falling victim to the Moor, be it the guests losing their life one way or another, or the countless children whose lives were lost to the chefs, used as food for upper beings. And there are thousands of shoes in here, meaning thousands of children kidnapped, captured, killed. This is the graveyard of them all. Shoes tossed into a pit. Very similar to another thing that happened in real life. And apparently, these walking burgers are more interested in eating this live 9-year-old than the finest food prepared by Gordon Ramsay himself that's sitting right in front of them. After dodging my year 3 teacher, we get to a bit that has no right to be as hard as it is. It requires you to dodge all their grubby hands across the table, and the hitboxes can get really weird here. And the perspective paired with the people on both sides of the table makes this really hard. For me, at least. Some people find it a breeze. Somehow. Anyways, what I meant by none of it is going to waste. I mean, it kinda does, but I'll touch on that in a second. I meant that the way these guys don't run out of food, even though they ravish through it all, is by, at certain intervals, the food will just sort of fall out of their mouth, which is pretty funny. After a couple guests get distracted by the yellow coat and try to chomp off your arm for copying it, you encounter another guest, and you need to backtrack to where you're safe, and then you need to jump on the back of the guest to make your way past him. Now in this entire game, you've had to avoid the monsters at all costs. The only time these enemies touch you is when you mess up and they catch you. But here, you need to touch them to progress. And of course, it's the ugly obese hellspawn. And even then, you can still mess up, as even though he eats slower than a mobility scooter can fly, his speed is as fast as a motorcycle. And after that, you find Marco Pierre again, and he apparently needs more food for the guests. And the hundreds of rotting children in the body bags won't do. We only have fresh produce. And after that, probably the easiest puzzle ever takes place. Literally every YouTube Let's Play has seen this room and gone, yep, the mirror, gotta break it. Ignore the years of bad luck, I'm a Minecraft YouTuber, I'm rich. Now afterwards, the most intense part of the game takes place. The doors slide open and guests smashed on top of each other reveal themselves and chase after you, smashing everything in their way, trying to get you. They clamber through the hallways as it twists and turns, drawers fall as you climb on them, you reach the table, they continue the climb to get you, as guests at the table reach for you too, the music ascends and you reach the light, swing, and escape, with all your limbs, and there goes my year 3 teacher. Genuinely, like I said, the most intense moment in the entire game. After escaping the chef, you assume you've escaped the guests entirely, and you'll just see the chefs again. Or you get a bit of downtime before you encounter another person. Nope, Little Nightmares throws everything at you in this sequence. Chased by the guests all piled on top of one another like they were waiting for you, it catches you so off guard, and the satisfaction of escaping and seeing that one guest fall over the edge, that's when you know you've escaped them for good. Well, another day's hard work all paying off. Are you kidding me? There was a bloody buffet back there, couldn't you have eaten that? Oh, fine, okay, well. We need to find some food, and the hunger seems to be a lot worse than it's ever been before. Oh, thank God. Seems these gnomes have warmed up to us. Such a nice guy. Here, I'll just take them. The lights flicker, the short silence before the music plays after you first grab this gnome and end its life. All as Shadow 6 watches from above, as your humanity is lost. As you look down at what was once a living thing, the second thing to offer you food when you were hungry. The first one was behind bars, this one wasn't. Would 6 have eaten the kid if he wasn't behind bars? Needless to say, you continue your journey wondering if 6 is really the hero of the story. Is she really the true victim here? It seems like these chapters just keep on improving as they go on. The incredible first shot, the introduction to how bloodthirsty the guests are was done perfectly, and the slow upscale of it all, introducing more guests at once, then bringing back the chef, and immediately bringing the whole horde. It was all done magnificently, and when 6 mercilessly devoured that gnome. It shows a different side of her. Makes you have second thoughts about her character. Are you really the hero of the story? all of it was executed phenomenally. I love it so much. But without further ado, the final chapter. After crawling through the vents, you see the geisha lady go into the elevator, which right off the bat tells you exactly where to go. As soon as you get to the stairs after going up the elevator, you hear the humming again. And if you're observant enough, this place should look familiar, shouldn't it? The door leading to where the humming is coming from is wide open. As the humming continues and repeats, the clock ticks in perfect sync with the beat. As you crouch past the lady doing her hair, your heartbeat gets increasingly louder. You make your way to the other room, and now I should mention the really clever lighting in this game. Key items and places you need to go are very clearly marked by the light. Like here, the vase is the only thing shedded in light other than the floor itself, immediately telling you what to do. You break the vase, freeing the key. You hear a gasp, and the humming stops. In this gameplay, you can see that this person instantly hid under the bed, expecting the lady to investigate. Having the ability to crouch under the bed was deliberate too. Tarzia could have just kept the bed with no gap, no way to get under it. But they understood that people would try to hide. And eventually, you should realize that she isn't coming for you. A first, for sure. As you walk into the room the lady was in, you find that she's no longer there. You use the key on the door, and the door slams shut behind you. You aren't alone. The lady knows that you're here, which alone makes this one of the most tense moments in the entire game, because you know that the lady knows that you're here, but you don't know when she's gonna strike. Mannequins litter the hallway, all looking exactly like the lady. I'd say that make her blend in, but it doesn't. When suddenly she appears, her white mask sticking out like a sore thumb as she approaches you, as she slowly increases in speed, and as you slide under the desk, she makes the strangest struggling noise I have ever heard. The next room is a massive open area with groups of mannequins. Naturally, you travel to the right, and once again, shedded in light, a mirror. Perfectly intact, unlike the hundreds of shattered ones we've seen earlier. And if the light wasn't enough of a clue to it being a key item, then listen to the sound it makes when you grab it. You take the mirror, and as you go back, the lady stands facing the eye and fades to dust. All lights go out, except for one massive spotlight in a random location in that room. As you stand there, drums start playing and the lady makes some move after you. This is your final showdown. She circles the spotlight and slows down as you face the mirror at her. She retreats in pain as you topple to the ground. Okay, the sequence is done really well, but it is just rinse and repeat, so I can't really describe every part of this boss fight in a unique way again and again and again. Imagine me trying to do that with the Boom Boo fight in Super Mario 3D World. It's just the same one attack but with a slightly different twist every time. That boss fight sucks. Okay, so you deliver the final blow eventually, and it cuts to you on the floor. And then the light turns on, showing the lady defeated. And somebody's hungry. The growls of Six's stomach get increasingly louder as her heavy breathing gets faster and faster as you approach the lady. And then... black dust begins to surround Six. She stands, and even more black dust appears. It gets darker and darker, the atmosphere more eerie than ever. Six slowly turns to the camera with intense music playing. Then just as her hooded eyes meet the camera, it cuts to black. I love the hero-villain parallels in this game. That is, if you're even able to call Six a hero. When the camera cuts back to Six, she's just left an elevator. A dark aura surrounds her. That classic tune plays again as you start to walk forward. I'll just let most of the scene play out itself, because I cannot match the power of this scene with words alone. As the camera starts to focus more on you than the area around you, the instruments slowly quiet down. You walk past the bloodbath, not even looking back at the destruction and death you single-handedly caused just by walking past these people. The humming gets louder, the doors to leave the moor open, practically inviting you out. This cutscene of Six walking up the stairs plays out on its own, taking control from you, as Six's control over her empathy and humanity is snatched away from her. The humming is replaced with a xylophone, higher pitched than the humming and simultaneously more comforting and off-putting. As Six walks out of sight, every gnome you hug throughout the game comes to the door to watch as you leave forever. Genuinely one of the most impactful and badass endings to exist, ever. The sheer power Six holds here, the ability to sprint being taken away from you, the lights turning off, any shred of humanity from Six lost from sight. In fact, I'll say it now, that applies for every Little Nightmares game. Not one of them has a bad ending. Except one, but I'll complain about that much later because it pisses me off. Wait, what do you mean every Little Nightmares game? There are only two. Couldn't you have just said both? No, because we're not done with the first game. There's a DLC, which I also need to talk about. And there's the mobile game, which I'll get to. Okay, now before I start, let me just explain some things. This DLC is the most controversial Little Nightmares product, the first chapter having a 65% positive review rating on Steam. For comparison, the first Little Nightmares has 95% overwhelmingly positive reviews as of recently, and 94% positive reviews overall. Little Nightmares 2 has 94% very positive reviews overall as well. Luckily, the reviews for every chapter of the DLC get more positive over time. But this is the only chapter with an overall mixed review rating. That's worse than Garden of Banban 2. How the actual hell? I understand the frustration of this chapter, but worse than Banban 2? Come on now. Also, this chapter doesn't really have many well done horror elements, with the monster of this chapter, that being the granny. She is basically just the shoe monster, but you know what it is. Taking away from the fear of the unknown factor that made the shoe monster so scary. She's gross and, worse than that, old. But overall this chapter is more frustrating and difficult than scary, so I'm gonna skip this chapter. And I will skip many of the puzzles and stuff in the other chapters when horror isn't involved, as I do want to get to the superior sequel, where I will cover puzzles and stuff like that. But either way, let's begin. At the end of the first chapter, because I'm not covering it. You get captured by Roger and are trapped in a cage. It shows you and Six both in separate cages, telling you when this DLC takes place. The second chapter happens after Six is trapped by Roger too. Damn, he's on a roll right now capturing these kids. And as it turns out, the one cage Roger dragged away in that cutscene was the character you play as, who doesn't actually have a name, but people just call him Runaway Kid. So I'll just call him RK since it sounds cool as hell. You wake up in the body bags and make your way out, but you take a pretty big fall on the way down. Hashtag epic fail. The gnomes investigate you and then skedaddle away as you wake up. But you're able to free one of them and hug them. Instantly, the tone changes. The music is more upbeat and cheerful as you use the gnomes to help progress through the moor. You start hugging and helping more and more gnomes and set them to work at the coal mines. You then set off to enslavely befriend more lovely gnomes. On your second hunt for garden gnomes, you enter an area requiring 2 fuses to progress any further. One you have right in front of you, the other is elsewhere. The only other place it could be is through the door and you can crouch under it. Convenient! As you enter, you are plunged in darkness. Using just your torch to see, you crawl forward, expecting something, not knowing what, until your light shines on a familiar face and a sharp horror sting sound effect plays. Here, the silence is deafening, with your heartbeat being the only loud thing there. You know that your torch is your best friend and making any noise will alert Roger of your location. Things like stepping on coal, stairs creaking. Regardless, you still move forward, grab the fuse, and escape Roger's grasp. After sending more gnomes to work, you can progress forward and oh come on now, he's back again. Nothing scary worth noting, but you distract him and get out. You continue forward again, use some gnomes, and find yourself standing on top of the elevator that the lady is currently travelling on. Yeah, so a massive tonal shift for the game with a more cheerful tone and the adorable gnomes and a good inclusion of Roger. I actually really like this chapter, but how is Roger still there? What, like on the timeline, what place does this part of the game come on? We know that 6 has just been captured and we've just been taken away and put on the woody bags, but by then, when we wake up and escape, wouldn't Roger be focusing on 6? Wouldn't Roger be trying to find 6? Rather than hanging about this coal area looking for you? Again, doesn't make any sense. Continuity errors, I guess, or something. But still, other than that, ignoring that, it's a very good chapter. I feel like the tonal shift here isn't too jarring, as the gnomes have been all over the place throughout the main game and the DLC, and in the main game, you could still hug them, but then get right back to hell. So giving the gnomes their own chapter feels natural, and it was a nice change of pace for the game. It gives you a sense of comfort, which makes the introduction of Roger all the more terrifying, although very short. Also, fun fact, the shadows of the gnomes aren't actually gnomes. The shadows are of children.
I don't like my window. When I look out through it, it looks back in through me.
You wander some dark halls and come across the lady again and sneak past her. Some creepy music plays which sets a disturbing tone for the rest of the chapter, although it isn't as creepy as it is off-putting. But here she isn't humming at all and we just hear the music box playing its tune. Even though it doesn't really fit in here, it seems sort of like a big reveal sort of tune rather than an introduction. But either way, it sets up the tone for the chapter and it reminds you that this is Little Nightmares. The whole DLC wasn't going to be with the gnomes, so it does its job. You enter a massive room where you spend most of your time and head to the right room and what the hell was that? Anyways, you get a thing, complete the thing, do another thing, enter the room, and there's a couple of pictures. One you should remember, it'll be important. Anyways, complete that, grab the thing and hide from the eye, and as you progress forward, you encounter these shadow things. I don't actually know what they're called, I'll be honest. Shine your flashlight on them to defeat them. After progressing forward and completing a ridiculously hard puzzle because of those damn shadow kids, you can finally open this door, requiring the 3 lady statues. Moving forward, you can see broken mirrors everywhere, and through a very dark hallway, you see the lady again, looking at herself in a not broken mirror, and she is hideous. If you try to move forward, even crouching, this happens. any case of background noise stops as she gasps and makes the most horrifying scream in any piece of media I have ever heard. Massive props to the voice actor. This scream is spine-chilling, paired with the flickering lights. It is so perfect and the most terrifying moment in the entire game. Because you know you weren't supposed to see that. Clearly she was hiding it. It shows another layer to the lady and her character. This is why she wears a mask. This is why everyone wears a mask. Sure, the masks already look disgusting, but imagine what they look like underneath them. It's not hard to imagine they look even more grotesque. On her character model in the scene, she looks completely normal, so clearly these mirrors reveal her true face, hence why all the other mirrors are broken, and why she was able to be weakened by the mirror 6 used to eventually defeat her. Also, doesn't she look like the granny there? I doubt they're the same, but related in some way? I don't know, just a thought. After the scene, you know that the lady knows you're here. You need a way to escape. Knowing how 6's story goes and that she kills the lady and it can't be you, you know you just need to escape. You continue regardless and you come across hundreds of mannequins. The lady even circles around some of them. Although she doesn't initiate a fight, and neither do you need to run away from her. You just need to move forward. She knows where you are, but you need to keep going. And as you walk past this hallway, you're stopped in the middle of it as the lady lifts you up with her powers, mask on. She walks into the light, you drop your torch, she twists and sculpts your body into something. And then the music concludes and cuts to black. You wake up as a gnome. Children's shadows for the gnomes from earlier. The foreshadowing in this game is so perfect and subtle, it's absolutely brilliant. You walk around a bit as the gnome, explore the area, past the ugly guests, and then you come across a familiar elevator. And by now you should have an idea of where you are in this area, as you have travelled past it before, as 6. After falling down this hole and through this crack in the wall, some music starts. Some familiar music. You should immediately recognize this room. Sausage in the middle, untouched. It should tell you at what part of the story both you and 6 are at. Remember how I said this? It seems sort of like a big reveal sort of tune rather than an introduction. About this exact same song, this is why. It works so well. And if you haven't pieced together the puzzle, somehow, all the other gnomes practically avoid the sausage, and you're the only one investigating it, and staying by it. When you realise it, who you are, what happens to you, in your couple of minutes of being a gnome, the only sympathetic one, the only one to show 6 any compassion, the only character to show anyone any love or care. RK knew that 6 was a kid like he was. RK wanted to help 6. Offering her this food makes it so much more impactful. This character you spent the whole DLC playing as, through all the difficulties, all the friends, all the hardships in this hour you played the DLC. Only to be... It practically renders his journey pointless. This game doesn't need the dialogue to outright explain the ending to you. The atmosphere, the familiar environment, you know where you are, you know what happens. And the worst part is, you can't stop it. You can't change his fate. Once again, one of the most powerful and impactful endings ever. This DLC is about half the runtime of the actual game, and in my opinion, although the actual game plays out better than the DLC and is a lot more consistent in quality, this ending is more powerful and jaw-dropping. It makes the saddest and shocking part of the actual game even sadder and shocking. This is truly a perfect ending, one that improved on the most incredibly executed part in the full game. I could gush about this ending forever, but I need to stop somewhere. Also, there's this theory that whatever 6 eats, she gains the memories of, hence explaining how she knew to use the mirror against the lady, as Arke saw what she looked like from the mirrors. This theory, in my opinion, is actually straight up bullcrap. There isn't much evidence pointing away from this theory, but there is even less pointing towards it. If 6 could put 2 and 2 together for the eye, stone people and gaze, eye moves around. Maybe I should avoid the eye. What? Simple puzzle solving, and plus it has the light shone on it. Wonder what to use. Yeah, I think it's a stupid theory. Myth busted, insert game theory joke. Oh my god, that's gone. From a gameplay standpoint, this chapter has the puzzles and combat, which are done quite well. Although some of these puzzles are way too convoluted and time consuming. And the build up to fully revealing the Shadow Kids is done quite well. Seeing them hide behind objects, run around in the dark. It's very subtle, but it gives you a clue that something is coming. But that ending, despite how hard this chapter, and even the first one too, makes getting through it all so worth it. Even though yes, like I said, it makes Arke's journey seem pointless, just to experience the ending and how impactful it is makes it worth it. And it makes you resent 6 even more. On playthrough of the main game, you experience the scene and leave shocked. You think the gnomes have finally warmed up to you, but that's not even the case. All the other gnomes feared 6, Arke didn't even know 6. He had just become a gnome. He had no reason to help her, but no reason to fear her either. He did it out of the kindness of his heart, which led to his demise. Because any act of kindness only leaves you worse off than you were before. Now for what they could have done with a camera, now that we know the lady's entire story and character, pretty much. In the camera, they just showed the lady sitting down doing her hair. This, on its own, is alright. It makes her presence more notable, showing that she will have some importance later on. But something I like in games is an incentive to look back on early parts of that same game that may have not made much sense on first playthrough, but reveal a lot on rewatch. Like with the Sixth Sense plot twist. By the way, go watch that movie, it is really good. Just try to ignore the fact that it was made by the same guy who made the Last Airbender movie. Seeing that it was made by M. Night Shyamalan on first watch was probably the scariest part of the entire movie. Anyways, I'm getting off track. What I'm saying is they could have had a scene on the cameras with the lady, or something to do with her. Maybe a pile of clothes somewhere with a gnome curled up on them. Doesn't make so much sense so early on, but after playing the DLC, it makes sense. Maybe a camera showing the lady looking in a mirror, her face hidden from sight, and then she smashes the mirror. Again, doesn't make sense so early on, but after the DLC, I actually posted these without the DLC. Doesn't matter. I still think it's a cool concept, makes the camera feel necessary and makes the game more interesting to come back to. And with that, we finish the first Little Nightmares. Despite being no more than 2 hours, in that time, it set up the perfect tone and atmosphere for this franchise, which I'm so glad they continued. Some insanely unique monster designs and concepts, amazing puzzles, amazing horror, obviously, amazing world building, and not one piece of actual dialogue between characters, or even text for exposition. They could have done that so easily. They could have had a note on the floor detailing the whole background story of the game. They could have had a Wikipedia's page worth of exposition for every enemy written down on a convenient list on a note that 6 could come across throughout the game. But they didn't do that. It wasn't necessary, and they realized that. And without that, they executed an incredible game on every level. Not perfect or flawless, but phenomenal nonetheless. And the whole background story works so well. Although it is easy to miss it all on paper, the areas you go to in the game are completely separate to each other, but little things in the background connect them together. Ignoring that, you get a scary experience with some dark moments, but pay more attention to background details, you find a much darker story being told. Also, can we just appreciate 6's theme and the rest of the music? I've gushed about it and how it enhances the scenes, but come on, I'm not talking about it enough! Respect for Little Nightmares music! Also, end credits scene. Now, the second game. Right off the bat, you should notice something different. Before you even hit new game, the menu instantly sets the tone for the entire game. For the entirety of the first game, the environment was shaded in this yellow tint, and for what little light there was, it seemed somewhat comforting, minus the mare clones from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. This whole game has many outside areas between chapters, and all of it has this blue overlay, not comforting in any way and more intimidating than the first. And doesn't that menu music sound familiar? Anyways, game time. It starts with a long twisted hallway, the camera slowly moving further along the hallway, close enough to see a door. The atmosphere is hair-raising here. The door has the iconic eye on it, and we all know how many times that appears in the first game. As it zooms in closer and closer to the eye, the static overlay gets increasingly noticeable and the eye lights up, so much that it looks like it has no pupil. Then it cuts to the character you play as in this game, Mono. It cuts to him in a field, with a TV behind him. Strange. Wait, how is that TV even on? We're in a forest! As you wander forward, you almost immediately encounter a rotting corpse. Maybe. It could be something else, like livers, stomachs, other internal organs. Disturbing, right? Didn't get that in the first game. In the first game we had small things like black handprints and leeches telling us something was off about this place. Here it doesn't even subtly tell us that something is wrong with this place. It just straight up shows you something so disgusting you can't even make up what it is. After crawling through a vent, which is in the forest for some reason. Oh god, now that isn't subtle either. Just a bag of dead bodies, and it's bloody massive. Makes you ask the question, who did this? Who are these people? And how did this happen to them? Limbs hanging out all piled together like that thing from the end of Inside. Now here we need to sprint away from this log, and once again, this game doesn't ease you into the world and gameplay like the first one. This is a sequel. You should expect weird and creepy stuff, so it doesn't need an introduction to anything, and it doesn't feel out of place, it makes sense. After that you swing on a noose, which by now isn't even all that strange. After a leap of faith, we scare off the crow from eating this organ. Hey man, get off! Say something for the kid. We then encounter the most Team Rocket trap I have ever seen. We're then forced to use a stick to set off this bear trap so that the stick gets snapped rather than our bones. It then scales it up to 1000 and sends hundreds of bear traps our way, forcing us again to use a stick to get past them. Then we need to use pine cones to set off the traps. And after running forward for a bit, we arrive at the house. We don't know why it's here or who it belongs to, but nevertheless, we break in. You know, maybe we are the bad guys in this story. The first room is the kitchen, and is filled with disgusting bits of rotten food and flesh. Ignoring the abominable bat crap known as food, this place so far is fairly cozy. We haven't seen an actual house in these games, so this is a nice change of pace. After going past that room, we start to hear a familiar tune. Now every time I've said that has been the music playing over the game. Not this time. This time it's different. The music is muffled. It can't just be the game. It has to be coming from somewhere inside the house. Your suspicions are confirmed when you go through the door to the basement, and the music gets louder and can only be heard through your left ear. After grabbing an axe from the room on the right, you go full on the shining mode on that door and give whatever child that's in there a heart attack. You try to befriend them, and who knows? Maybe you can send them to work in the coal mines too. They decline your offer and run ahead, making sure you can't find them, so they can mine diamonds in peace. Then why are you just standing there? After chasing them and maybe grabbing the hat from the left door, you encounter this delightful family. They've been stuffed. We know from the Moosehead that whoever lives here loves taxidermy, but they seem to have stuffed perhaps their own family. The boy with a heap of stuffing falling out of his eye, the father's mouth sunken like the chef's and he is also missing an arm, and the mother has her whole face stitched up. Some truly nasty stuff. And after ruining their family meal and interrupting their engrossing conversation, you and the trapped kid, who I'm just gonna call TK because it sounds cool as hell, realize that they're probably alone in this world without each other. So you set aside your differences and break into the attic. Now, almost every other thing you do here requires TK, using them to lift you up, to push stuff together. They could have spaced it out a little bit, but it teaches you how TK's AI works, so it's alright, I don't mind it. After crawling under some stuff, you find Granny from the hit game Granny, holding the crank that you need. There is something so eerily ominous about this scene. Other than the fact that there is a stuffed grandma in the attic, she is placed with her head in the light, as if this was a deliberate choice, because there are a few other windows in this house that bring in light from the outside. Whoever stuffed these people deliberately put the grandma there. But why? Are they lonely? Did they want revenge? We'll never really know for sure. Anyway, say goodbye to the granny from the hit game Granny, crank that crank and get the key, and you might notice some weird body parts in these bags. Remember that. You leave and find big footsteps on the floor, giving you a clue at what you're going up against. As you enter the shed next to it, ignoring Shrek's outhouse, that's not even me trying to be funny by referencing Shrek, this is quite literally just his outhouse. And you finally find the hunter, doing what he does best, taxidermy. After crouching past him and lifting up this, seriously, why is this stuff even here? He hears that, and like you always do when you see small children in your house, he immediately pulls out his shotgun. You land on some guts and need to make a run for it. Luckily, he's a pretty crap shot and seems to hit everything you're hiding behind rather than you. Also, he doesn't shoot TK for some reason. You need to get behind the crates and run forward until you can actually hide. Here, you need to crawl through the tall grass, and you need to be really quiet and not make the slightest noise. Stupid Chrome, try not to get found, quit making noise! You then make it to the hole and the hunter thinks he's gonna get you by shooting down the hole. Just for the people who got cocky as soon as they got down it. It's like, I can't get me down here. You make another leap of faith and need to rely on TK to lift you up. Good thing the two of you are best friends. You continue forward and the hunter finds you. As you climb up the wooden planks, he shoots these very conveniently placed TVs instead of you. And you run to the end of this, I think it's a barn, and you hide from him in the sludge they make twiglets out of. After he continues walking, you swim in the sludge to make your way to the next log. You then push the log to get past him again, and then make a run for it to the shed. TK keeps the door shut, and once again, look at the lighting, and take a guess for what you need to do next. That's right, you get TK to help you lift up the shotgun, and as the hunter goes full on the shining mode on you, you go full on Resident Evil Leon mode on him and blast his brains out. You've killed the hunter. Mono and TK topple to the floor. They get up and move on with their lives. Another day's hard work. This chapter sets the tone for this game really well. Much better than how they did it in the first game. Flips everything from the first game on its back and says, remember how slow that beginning was? Well, forget that, this is a sequel, you know the horrors from the first game. You don't need to be slowly introduced and immersed to this one. And with that, the next chapter begins. 5-minute travelling scene. Just to get one of the coolest shots in the entire game. The house is curved over, the music absolutely soaring, completely elevating the entire scene. It's like you know you shouldn't be here, but regardless you entered because you're a rebel. As you enter the first house, you see clothes hanging from a smashed TV. What is it with TVs in this place? When you leave, you see more clothes falling from somewhere, more TVs. You enter what seems to be a barber shop with more clothes lying around, and another familiar face. Resident's picture? As you complete another puzzle involving a noose, you continue forward and enter the next room, where some strange warbling seems to be coming from. The TV flickers and makes some indescribable noises, and you need to approach it and interfere with the transmission. You need to completely straighten the corridor, and once you do that 3 times, you get sent inside the TV. Look familiar at all? As you move closer to the end of the hallway, you begin to move slower and slower, the sound effects getting louder and higher pitched, and then you're sent back by TK pulling you out. But after that, you know that one way or another, you need to get to the end of the hallway. That is your end goal. Anyways, you continue and find yourself at the entrance to a school, and without even entering, I think you know that this is going to be the scariest location from both games. And that's either because, number one, you've seen it all over YouTube, I mean Corey Kenshin's video has what, like 30 million views? Or, I mean it's school, of course it's going to be horrible. As you enter, the whole place seems to be lit at least a bit, telling you that you are not alone in the school. People are still having lessons here. Something is here with you. Hey, that picture looks familiar. You break the floorboard using the power of teamwork and crawl through this vent. However, after leaving the vent, you hear a hair-raising groan. What made it you don't know, but you move forward still, and you see some light coming out of a door, and in that light, the shadow of a creature doing something with its neck as it retracts back to its body and shuts the door. The grotesque sound effects really confirm that this chapter is going to be horrifying. You don't know when you're going to see that thing again, and you don't want to either, but you know you're going to have to. Then as you continue and step on this floorboard, you realise it's a booby trap. Either your face gets smashed in or you dodge it and collect your ball. Another booby trap, and in the hallway, you can see a little gremlin sprint past. And if you go to the door on the right, which is what you'd assume is the right way to go, if you look at 90% of the scenes in the game, you're required to move to the right to progress, so naturally, you'd assume this is the way to go. You'd be wrong. Another booby trap being a lot more violent than usual. After dodging more booby traps, the one locker shaded in light falls over and traps you, and RK gets kidnapped by these bowl-headed vector-looking kids. Some of them don't even have half their heads, seeming to be made out of porcelain. After escaping the locker, you smash their heads in. This one was even eating a frog. I must say though, I do appreciate how Tazia and Bandai Namco managed to make this chapter as realistic as possible to an actual British school. So, thank you for this representation. In the area to the right, you should hear some footsteps and some chalk on a whiteboard. A lesson is going on. And look who it is, the teacher. As you sneak forward towards the door on the right, you should notice a key on top of the shelf. But as you try to get it, the shelf falls and you need to hide because this alerts the teacher and she hastily rushes to the door. And then... the score here and the sound effects do such a good job at really unnerving you in this pants-wettingly terrifying scene. They managed to make the noises of the teacher's neck extending sound so awful and simultaneously realistic. Or as realistic as you can get when you're in a world where a teacher can do this. Horrifying sequence. Also, more clever lighting. In the room with this teacher and the students, it's got that yellow lighting from the first game. But as you go into the blue light in the next room, that's when the teacher reveals her horrifying ability. Like with the first encounter, blue light. A theme with the first game's monsters is that their horror typically came from their appearance. They didn't necessarily have a hidden power, with one exception. Anything scary was just how they looked. They didn't have layers to their horror necessarily. They didn't have anything to hide. Except for everyone with the masks, but those don't count because we don't know what they look like without them, with one exception. And the yellow light showing the teacher for the first time could be used to deceive you. You might have thought that this is all the teacher has to offer in terms of horror, a regular-ass, tall, wrinkly lady. Like how all the horror came from how she looked there, you might have thought she had nothing to hide, and all the horror was immediately on display right there and then. But then as she comes into the blue light, the most common theme of the lighting in the Nightmares 2 is both outside and inside. That's when she shows her extendable, disgusting, just foul looking neck. Anyways, after that experience, You now try even harder not to get caught, knowing the horrors that would take place if you were found. Also, something I found interesting, if the teacher sees you before the neck reveal, then she'll send the students to maul you to death. But after the neck reveal, then she'll for sure use that against you. Good way of hiding something until it was revealed. Think of how less scary the teacher would be without that sort of reveal / introduction. Anyways, you might want to make a run from it from here like I did. And if the teacher can't catch you, then she gets her gremlins to go after you, which definitely got me good.
Oh my god, the children, the kids, no!
You then encounter a class clown, and you can either end its misery or leave him be. I can't imagine what it'd be like trapped in school forever, so it'd probably be nicest to kill him. Quit moping on the floor like that, you should be thanking me! And he seems to be scribbling things on the floor. A tower, which you should remember. Eyes. It's pretty horrible. What could he have even done to warrant such a punishment? Trapped in this room with a bloody chain. After leaving the vent, you need to hide from the teacher before she sees you. She appears to be beating something. Children, maybe? But it can't be, that's the chef's job. After hiding from her again, you make your way to the library where the teacher is too, frickin' nerd. And after knocking over some books, you expect the teacher to lunge out, but she doesn't. Assuming you're safe, you move to the next shelf and oh god! She chases you and you escape. You jump from pile of books to pile of books and she scrutinizes every nook and cranny around said book pile. Jesus lady, what are you smiling at? Upon entering this room, hoping to find the key to the door, you find a porcelain kid roped to a chess piece as a punishment for doing something. No wonder her class is so well behaved. This is what happens to them if they misbehave. Another reason to bring back the cane. After completing that puzzle and getting the key, you make your way to a very messy hall, cafeteria maybe, yep definitely. You enter the cafeteria and see a boy cleaning the plates, what a polite young lad. And someone in the back is... let's just say the lemonade is now half priced, it would be expensive if it was good. After bonking the kids, you retrieve this kid's head and use it to wander the cafeteria without being noticed or dissected by the children. They seem to like that stuff. Morbid, sure, but you gotta do what you gotta do. How else am I supposed to survive British schools? The kids playing jump rope seem to be singing a familiar song. After using a brain to open the door like, jeez, this is a school, they just have this stuff lying around just in case? By now you'd think they just straight up have a dead body lying around. Oh, yeah. You get the brain after using a noose again to swing to the other side, just to find my year 6 teacher. Well, at least she's teaching her students something they enjoy, at least they don't have to do geography. Lucky b****s. She stumbles into the other room and so do you, just see her doing some more stuff, as well as stuffing some organs into this scarily accurate human body. After stealthily making it past her using your invisible cloak, you kill some more kids and make your way to a freakishly hard perspective-based combat section, which shouldn't be so difficult. Anyways, you kill the kids and see what the kids did to RK. And then you kill the kids and save RK. And they take a pretty hard fall, but RK tags along anyways. You then open a window with the help of TK, immediately reminding you of how TK's AI works and that you guys are friends, and you remember how comforting it is to have a friend in hell. After ruining my year 6 teacher's favourite piano, you go through the door and there's another little hellspawn drawing on the floor. There's a hammer you can use, but you can see TK slowly approach the kid too. Now, either you kill the demon yourself, or TK just... That is the last kid you killed throughout the whole game. This shows something we haven't really seen in TK yet. Of course, both kids killed the hunter, but there is some vengeance and hatred inside of TK. Makes you wonder if they're alright or what's really up with them. As you progress, you hear a piano playing. That can only be my year 6 teacher playing her second favourite piano. If you enter whilst the piano isn't playing, then you're reminded that the students from earlier weren't crafted from the Devil's Nightmare. But teachers sure are. In a very tense scene involving patience and caution, You make your way to the vent, and after opening it, even if you waited for the piano to start playing, Mr. Demented Trunchbull hears it. But the vents are the only safe place. Every time you've gone there, it's time to rest and relax. Both games have shown you that, excluding that scene with Roger, but he could only get you out that one bit, and he was very easy to get past. And in this world of bloodthirsty and disgusting monsters, it's nice to have a safe place, away from the monsters and hellspawn. TK is already in there, pushing this thing, waiting for you. One of the most tense and butt-clenching moments from any game ensues. Also makes for really good thumbnails. You frantically rush through the vents, a previously established safe place, as the teacher squeezes through the claustrophobic space tomb, making one final last-ditch effort to catch you for good. One more leap of faith and the teacher retracts her neck for the last time. Can I just mention that she's the only main monster in this game that you don't kill? You walk through the rain and come across another insane shot, showing two sides of the pale city as the buildings curve inwards, and you cross over this rickety wooden plank to the other side. Despite looking the same as every other area in this game, you still feel like you're in a completely new area. Leaving the school and the woods behind, the atmosphere becomes more tense, knowing that you're progressing, but things aren't gonna get any better. And through this door, you can see a raincoat. A yellow raincoat, sticking out in the blue light like the teacher's neck sticks out from her body. TK walks up to it and puts it on. The only source of light flickers and some more familiar music plays, therefore confirming that TK, Trap Kid, was 6 all along, thus explaining the violence towards that kid earlier. I know I set that up for like a big reveal, but if you saw the trailer to Little Nightmares 2, then you already know that TK was 6. And it's on the poster too! After that happens, she lifts you up to the door handle, showing that the raincoat changes nothing. She's still your friend. She trusts you, and you trust her. Not giving you a sense of fear, but comfort, knowing that you already know this character. After some simple puzzles and traversing of the environment, you're faced with a new chapter. The school was the scariest, but this is the hardest and most stressful chapter from both games. So yeah, that was the school. Easily the most well-known part of Little Nightmares as a whole, and it is just really, really good. All the horror was top-notch and the combat was introduced perfectly. I also like how the teacher was more of a prominent threat throughout this chapter. Something the last chapter I think struggled with was making the hunter a prominent threat. Problem is, half the chapter he isn't even there. The teacher, however, is here throughout the entire chapter, and even after she was introduced, they still included the students at parts, and it didn't seem like Tarzia forgot about either monster and gave one more screen time than the other. It's perfectly balanced. And, spoiler alert, this problem is also prevalent in the upcoming chapter. The teacher is by far considered the scariest enemy by the community, unless you look at... I honestly disagree, but I can't say that I don't see where they're coming from, because that would be a lie. So, other than being a horrifying chapter, it's also the best structured chapter in my opinion. After walking through the hall, you can see some questionable choices for doors and something behind them. With that said, the first door you open has 6 saving you from falling into a random abyss. You're required to jump on the hospital beds, and I have no clue why the void is there. It doesn't make sense, but whatever. It gets you ready for what's to come. And after that, you're introduced to another mechanic, the fuses, which you might remember from the first game's DLC. You need the fuses to make it onto this crumbling elevator, giving you an instant sense of desperation to get out. After falling from that vent, you're shrouded in darkness, with the only light source being a torch, telling you that this place is almost abandoned, and this torch might be the only light source in this entire chapter. What's worse is that you don't know what monsters reside within this area, but you know you need to face them in the dark. And what's even worse is controlling this torch on the PC. One of the only criticisms that I have seen from this game are the controls, excluding IGN's trustworthy review of this game, And I have to agree. But the controls, not IGN. Controlling this torch is like juggling glass cups whilst trying to recite the Magna Carta with a loaded gun ready to shoot you if you get a single word wrong. Is that a bit extreme? Nah, no it's not. Also, you got another eye. I'm telling you, they see everything. After getting some coke and opening the door, you encounter another TV, and this one calls to you again. After entering, you get slightly closer to the door, but 6 pulls you out again, and the camera zooms out to reveal the area around you. After burning Bonnie, you can open this door. Your objective is clear here. Get the fuses to open the door to the elevator. Here you enter a room full of limbs. Lovely, though not out of the ordinary for these games. Remember the hunter's attic? 6 lifts you up to the next room, separating you two yet again. You move forward, and one of the only sources of light here is shone on the headless and legless remains of what once was a human being, strapped down on the desk, having experienced God knows what. Then as you move this box, the body shakes and the arm detaches itself from the body and wriggles off. This is the first monster of the chapter, a severed, living hand, which tells you that the rest aren't going to be any more pleasant. Boxes of limbs move as you hear the rattling and scuttling of the hand. It then blocks your exit and leaps at you, and if you get caught, then it grabs hold of your head, suffocating you. Okay, you make your way to a massive crate. Climbing up, you wave goodbye knowing you're safe. Never mind. Remember how I said this game flips the first game on its back entirely, practically breaking the rules of it? I wasn't lying or exaggerating, I was dead serious. You do escape though, and are safe from what's that in the event? No, you are definitely not safe. You're then presented with the fuse you need and a hammer, and the school already showed the combat, so you know exactly what you need to do. Kill this failed test subject. So yeah, you do that and return to 6, breaking the fingers of a plastic arm. 6. It is never too late to get help. We still don't know if this is a regular hospital or a mental hospital, and by the looks of things, this is a mental hospital. Don't worry, we'll get you help. You use the fuses to move forward, and you and 6 are separated yet again. Right off the bat, you're stopped from progressing by a mannequin. There is only one thing you can do in this room: pull the lever. Looking at the cable, this leads to the light. You need to turn off the light. Now, if you haven't pieced it together yet, you need to get out. How is the light gonna help you leave, you're wondering? Well, as the lights flicker on and off, the mannequin begins to move. Remember that torch? Yeah, they only move in the dark. These are the scariest monsters in the entire 2 games in my opinion. Yes, surpassing the teacher. These amalgamations are so unpredictable that even after knowing everything about the game as Little Nightmare's #1 fan, I was still scared to go further on stream. I almost didn't want to do it. This isn't necessarily an original concept. This is the typical weeping angel, but their weakness isn't your gaze, but your torch. So why are these things so uniquely scary compared to other weeping angel-like characters? Well, first off, the designs. They are the remains of a human. They used to be human, now a deformed, messed up beast. At the time, you don't know who brought this fate upon them, but either way, they're hunting you. Plus, when you shine that light on them, they don't instantly freeze, as if it's something they're forced to do. They shiver a bit and shake. This is a natural reflex. They have to be scared of the light. It gives you an idea of their past and what made them like this. And after seeing what's happened to them later on and what they had to endure, you feel sympathy. But they're in your way, they are fast, they are relentless, they are unpredictable, and you need to have your focus at an all-time high. Now with that encounter, you question whether any of the other mannequins played throughout this chapter will move too, constantly keeping you on edge, having your heart beat faster and faster, until you do encounter one that moves and you're forced to concentrate fully on your movements and multitasking at keeping these rabid mix and match Barbie characters at bay. The next reason for why these guys are so uniquely scary is their inconsistent speed. Sometimes when you face away from them and your torch no longer is shining on their face, they might adjust their posture and take a few slow steps and then start charging at you at full speed. Sometimes, if you leave one till very late and it's just about to grab you, when you light them up, they, in just a few frames, go back to their regular position. And if you don't move in that position, they say, screw it, and grab you anyways. Also, this guy adds points to the scare factor alone. Although, a similar Weeping Angel I have for comparison is the Coilhead from a small game called Lethal Company. The Coilhead is insanely fast, and with first person, you have to have all your focus on this one enemy, usually getting you killed by other enemies, as you can't see them. As looking away to see them will also get you killed by the Coilhead. Both Weeping Angel-like characters retain some similarities. For example, when you look at them, both of them don't instantly freeze, some part of their body moves a little bit whilst they're freezing. Both can be unfair in some cases. Personally, I think the Coilhead is scarier, but the replayability of Lethal Company adds to that, as anytime you do play, which for many people is very often, you still have a chance of seeing him. Little Nightmares is more of an experience, and so the encounters with them are scripted, and can become predictable if you're as obsessed with the games as I am. But that begs the question, why was I still so scared to go against them despite knowing exactly what was ahead? Well, the answer is the atmosphere, and the question comes in on the answer too. I knew what was coming. I knew I'd have to face these things. I knew the atmosphere. I knew the feeling I felt before just watching people play this game, and I knew I'd experience it all again. I felt like I was experiencing it all for the first time though, because it's unique every time you play. Why doesn't this apply to other chapters and enemies? Because for the most part, attacks from enemies are completely scripted. Kids jumping out the locker? Scary, but scripted and can be expected after you die from them. Teacher ramming her head through the vent? Traumatizing, yes, but scripted, so you would expect it. Also, because YouTubers use that frame in every single Little Nightmares thumbnail. But with the patients, they rely entirely on your skill on handling the torch, which makes it that much harder and scarier. Especially for me, I had to play it on keyboard and mouse. Whether you play it long and safe and stay flashing them, keeping them as far away from you as possible, or play it dangerous and make a run for it, hoping they don't catch you. Whether you make a mistake with the torch, which is very easy on PC, gets you incredibly close to these guys, and when you have patients coming at you from all directions, you can't make sure this guy doesn't move any further, you need to freeze more of these guys. The fear I felt with the patients doesn't apply to the rest of these monsters, because half their scenes are scripted chases or mistakes that cause a chase to unfold, which I either fail on, or escape and they go back to their usual AI routines. These guys aren't like that. They are completely stationary until you arrive. You are their target, and with so many patients you need to worry about, you are constantly stressing and worrying about them whilst they're in the room. Multitasking here is insanely difficult, but not painful. You can still get past them eventually, even on PC, but it brings you to a lot of close calls. And you don't have time to rest. You need to keep on moving, almost pretending that the scene that just took place didn't even happen. Because you can't stay and reflect on what happened. They are everywhere and you need to keep on moving. Stress I hate, and that is what these enemies bring to the table. Stress is horrifying, and seeing it being used as a fear technique here is perfect. I think I've made my point here, let's continue. After climbing through the vent and finding some exquisite mature cheese, you run down a hall with prison doors on each side of you, then out of nowhere, the mannequin's hands pop out of the doors trying to grab you. Shining a light on the hands doesn't do anything. Some break out the doors and chase after you, some even block your path. And after that madness, you enter a seemingly empty room. A nice change of pace, although it is pitch black. Hey, who dropped the soap? Here you can find someone getting a nice intestine bath. We only sell the finest bathing products here at Temu. Then after using the drop soap to open the door, you see someone else getting a Temu bath. And someone else in a wheelchair who presents the closest thing in this game you can call a jump scare as he leaps out his chair like Charlie's grandpa did in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You need to turn the light on in the other room to freeze him and use the wheelchair to get out. You're then presented with another multitasking room and Kane from the Amazing Digital Circus. As you move forward, you realise that this is the most amount of mannequins in one room, apart from, of course. And here, almost all of them can move. Okay, now, I don't want to brag, but I died the most amount of times at the first patient encounter on stream. But I beat this part first try.
In any way, qualified to be playing! Oh my god, first try! First try!
I know. Yeah. New York? Yeah, I'm a new influencer. What makes me different from the other influencers? Well, I beat this hard bit in Little Nightmares 2 first try. They hung up. After that, you use the electric chair to pop out the fuse, mental hospital, and you pass it to 6, who sets you free. Now you can finally go to the elevator. You encounter another hand, and 6 holds the other hand back, and after the first hit on the hand, the other hand shows itself. Yeah, this bit is real tough, but it's not scary, it's just hitting hands, which you've done before. But after that, you see some masks from the first game, like the ones the guests used and the one that Roger used, and then something tugging on the shelves. After hiding behind this box, this thing shows itself, and holy crap. I remember when I saw this reveal from the demo. This is the first and only monster to date that actually gave me nightmares. I was scared of everything else, yes, but I never had nightmares of them. But the doctor, or my geography teacher, I had nightmares of, and I can't express the fear I felt simply seeing his face in this reveal. The eyes almost turned up into the back of his skull, his upper lip curled up onto his face. That cut scares me the most though. I'm not surprised, the barber here probably did it. Look at those scissors. When I wrote this, I was gonna make a joke about how this barber character was cut from the game, but Pet Brick Productions beat me to it. Also, check out her video on it, it's really good.
Okay, Pet Brick Productions is actually here. I'm so sorry. I promise that was a genuine mistake. Don't worry, the exact same thing has happened to me about 2 years ago, because I used to sound like this.
Hello? Is anyone there?
Doctor's reveal is done so well, with the background noise and the lighting, it's perfect. You watch as he Spider-Mans his way across the ceiling and the noises he makes, also done so incredibly well. I can never tell if he's laughing maniacally or crying or just stressing out. After sneaking past him for the first and certainly not the last time, you find a room full of patients on hospital beds. To progress, you need a block from over here to use to open the door. The doctor investigates, and gets a bit too up close and personal with the camera. 6, what are you doing? Do not interrupt his nose picking session. You and 6 are separated yet again. You get the key to continue. You make your way back to where the doctor is, and he's sawing this man's arm off. Mental hospital. You distract him by turning off this guy's life support, as you do. You get the fuse and use it to get out, but the doctor begins his mad goose chase and huffs and waffles his way through the doors to get you. He pushes down some shelves, objects shattering, he crushes some of the hospital beds knowing you're under there, all whilst he breathes like he's being held at gunpoint. You go into the incinerator and he completely ignores 6, but follows you in. And after making it out, you shut the door and you have the choice to incinerate him, or leave him trapped there for eternity. Leaving him trapped is more cruel, but burning him is more satisfying. As he bangs on the door trying to escape, his breathing becomes faster and more desperate, until it suddenly stops, as 6 warms herself with his ashes. Knowing that you've overcome these monsters and escaped their grasp, you continue to the next chapter. I'll be honest, this chapter felt really short. The hands of the mannequins took up so much time, the doctor had practically no time to do anything. He had his intro scene and the chase at the end, but that was almost it. He only had the intro scene and the chase as scary parts of his encounter, and even then, the chase is, I'm not exaggerating here, structured exactly the same as the guest chase from the first game. whereas with the patients, any scene with them is peak horror, and the hands are just kind of creepy. But the doctor isn't as scary, because half the time you can't see his face, because he's on the ceiling and covers the lights. Half the time you can't see the scariest part of the creepiest and most disgusting monster. Overall, I still love this chapter because of the first two enemies, but there is so much missed potential with the Doctor. Like,
He could have had the patients come to life on the final chase, and with the theme of flipping the first game on its back, that would fit perfectly. The only time we've had two different monsters in the same areas with the teachers and students and the lady and the guests, but with the teacher only one would attack you at a time, and neither the guests or the lady would attack you in that scene. It would have been perfect for the hospital to show that off, but when the Doctor was introduced, we knew that we wouldn't have to face the patients or the hands, both of which had numbers over the Doctor. The Doctor you just can't even see. Imagine the chase scene, you had the patients or the hands chasing you too, blocking your path. You'd need to multitask using the flashlight with running away from the Doctor. I don't think having a Pokemon battle with the sledgehammer versus the hand would be very fun whilst running away from the Doctor, but being helpless defending yourself from them as they approach you too would add so much.
personally, I think my idea for the last chase of this chapter would be difficult to implement and or play if they hypothetically decided to roll with this idea in development, but still, it would be different, and with how easy this chase is, it needs some difficulty thrown in there too. Brilliant chapter, but some missed potential either way.
You know, at this point through editing the video, I thought I was gonna be done with it because I have 12 audio recordings left, and in total I had 100. Each of the audio recordings from here on out is 2 to 6 minutes long. Before it was hardly over a minute for most of them. I had a choice, you know. I had a choice!
Nothing much of note happens until you reach a massive open area with a bench in the middle. More clothes, some falling from somewhere, remember from the beginning. Anyways, you continue forward, and then these new monsters don't have a setup and an introduction. Tarzia Studios just writes them right through the floor. These guys are the viewers and make some indescribable noises just like TVs, and as he runs away you can hear a fairly distant crash, and as you enter the next room, you see the same viewer's face smashed right through the TV. As you move forward, you see another viewer peering through the door to see its bright light from what we can see of it, and then it's immediately answered for what that light is. TVs, giving them even more significance in the story. These viewers are addicted to the screens. Like how in the first game everything was connected to gluttony and food, including sex. Here, everything is connected to the TVs, including mono. You can even see a viewer watching it in his bath. Don't think that's a good idea, bud. Might just be me. After an elevator puzzle without the monkey from Toy Story, 0 out of 10, you find another quick phenomenal shot of this massive tower, like from the dunce's drawing. This tower is known as the Signal Tower, which I'll talk more about later.
As you enter one of the buildings, it begins to crumble. 6 trips and you run ahead, knowing there's no time to turn back. 6 was half crushed by a couch and more rubble. And worse, your torch breaks! You help her out, and you both fall to the floor, and there's a moment where you just stare each other in the eyes. Actually, that was a lie. You can't see either of the characters' eyes. You help her out, and quickly you get back on track, by 6 helping you reach another door handle. You then continue forward, and another TV calls to you. You finally make it to the hallway once again. The ambience louder, clock ticking faster. You're already closer than ever before. You jump, and you finally reach the handle. You did it. You accomplished the one real goal you had this entire time. You let go, and the door opens. The only ambience now is the ticking, now quieter, and this loud ringing in your ear. The door slowly opens to reveal a pink light. The door has this chromatic abrasion effect over it. As it opens, the ambience again gets louder. Black dust on the floor, and it reveals a man just sitting. The ambience grows more intense. The ticking noise is inconsistent and echoing loudly. Then the background goes blue, and the man slowly stands up, and 6 pulls you out. In the TV, you can see the man at the screen. in the end credits scene to Little Nightmares, you can see the same man in the screen. His hands appear against the screen, and he interferes with the TV, and Mono is stunned, looking to be experiencing a lot of pain. Six remains unaffected. This man has the same abilities as Mono does. The lights flicker, the room curves and warps into the TV. Six runs away, and the thin man emerges from the screen. He slowly stands up again. You can hear bones cracking, and you see him to run much slower near him. He doesn't frantically run at you, trying his hardest to feast on your organs or anything like that. He just slowly walks towards you, his footsteps as loud as bongo drums. You find a place to hide, and I have no idea what Six is doing here. Did she hit her head when the building was collapsing? The thin man stands in the doorway. He's seen Six. No way! How did he do that? Can he see everything? Six leaps towards Mono for help, but the thin man leans forwards, reaching his hand out, and takes Six away without even touching her. The only thing left of her being her soul. Hey, doesn't that look kind of familiar? Mono just had to witness his only friend throughout his entire journey be taken away from him. And for once, he feels helpless. For the bullies, Mono had a way to defeat them introduced instantly. The hospital, they had to be separated, and Mono and Six were probably alright with that. But here, Mono is completely helpless. He doesn't know how to defeat the Tin Man. He is well and truly alone. As you approach Six's soul, it disappears. You go through the TV, but as you go through, it's like a massive fleshy tube with eyeballs everywhere. It's here that you learn that you can now use the TVs to travel. After some more puzzle solving and an encounter with the viewer, you realize how desperate these guys are towards these TVs, where they'll even unintentionally take their life just to get that sweet satisfaction of the warm and pleasant screen. You soon encounter the best shot in the game as a signal tower looms over the pale city, and you're directly in its gaze. Viewers stand there and one by one fall off the building, having the signal tower take their bodies and leave their clothes to lie on the city street. You electrocute the viewer, complete a puzzle, electrocute another viewer, and see a whole swarm of viewers watching a TV. You complete a puzzle and trick the viewers and use the TV to escape. Oh crap. You break the TV and the viewers are hungry for the soul of the child who took away the one thing comforting them in this joyless world. They chase you down, making their atrocious noises while some really good music plays. Helen will kill you, so oh god damn it Helen, and you leave. It's afterwards that you see another TV, and Six in it. You can save her now. You try pulling her out, but the thin man pulls her back in, and he emerges yet again. For a second, he just stands there before he strides towards you. As you go through the door and he catches up, he, again, stands there, watching you escape. He peeks through a broken floorboard, and just as you think he's gone, in the massive hallway, the door opens up, and he teleports closer and closer to you, making you move slower and slower. These scenes with the Thin Man are the most tense scenes in the game, because you never know when he'll make his next move. You don't know when he'll teleport or how close he'll get when he does, and when he does get close, he just stands there, and again, you don't know when he'll reach out to grab you. It's that cluelessness that leaves you with this feeling of immense fear not wanting to get caught, and it's done brilliantly. You make your way to a train, and there he is again. You barely escape by separating the two trains, and there you both get a good look at each other. The train speeds up and comes to a sudden stop. You take a very hard fall. Here you can see Six's soul lead you forward, playing on the train tracks. I'll talk more about this as this scene is very important to something Six's soul may represent. She leads you to a ladder, and after climbing all the way up, you find yourself in the middle of the signal tower's gaze. The buildings bend and curve and the lights flicker as the Thin Man appears. And then the most badass moment from any game takes place. Mono takes his hat off as the Thin Man approaches him, and you use your powers against him as he does the same. You knock him back as the buildings wobble like jelly. The score ascends further. The Thin Man is knocked to the ground the final time. Black dust must have been particles fading away from him like Mono when a TV shows up and calls to him. The Thin Man tries to stand but can't. He gets one final look at Mono as he crumbles and dies.
He's not saying.
Moves the buildings out of the way and brings the signal tower to him. This is the most legendary and satisfying antagonist defeats ever. I cannot think of something that comes close to this. The score, the way the buildings move, reacting to the powers you two use against each other, showing the sheer power you both hold, being able to warp and distort reality. This scene is genuinely perfect. I cannot think of a single bad thing about it. And also the gameplay of it, on how you defeat the Thin Man, is the same way you enter the TV. It gives me goosebumps every time I see it. You enter the signal tower, and gravity seems to only affect you. You go through the doors and you're able to deduce which one you need to go through as you hear another familiar tune. As you go forward, you reach a normal room with the music box making the noise. Bears and toys from previous chapters surround the room. As you approach it, Mono stops as he sees 6 in this horrible form. This is what the Thin Man did to her. What did she do to deserve something like this happen to her?
Ignoring all that stuff,
6 stays close to her music box as she did at the beginning. You can call her to bring her closer as it reveals a mallet. You have to do it to free her. You hit the music box and you're sent to this area, all alone. Mono isn't even there. It just shows this empty room with no walls, nothing. You return to 6 and the walls begin to fall apart to reveal this fleshy abomination. 6 cowers and screams as she begins to chase you. The whole tower begins to collapse, just like the house did when 6 got hurt, with you running in front, just like in the house. You break through this door and 6 cradles her music box, ignoring you for now. You call to her and she smashes anything in her path as she tries to kill you. You hit the music box yet again, sending you to that room all alone. Again, you're required to escape using the axe to the right, and the signal tower shows more of its fleshy true form. You hit it again, and you're alone again. Background pink at first, then turning blue. You escape again, and hit the box yet again. 6 is still there. The room no more. The walls now only flesh. You call to her. Something once used to bring 6 closer now has her retreating and cowering in fear, scared of the noise. You hit the box, you call, and you hit the box one final time. 6 has returned to her regular form. But there's no time to talk, or apologize, or even explain. The signal tower is crumbling and you both need to get out. The flesh grows, eyeballs all looking at you. 6 gets a big head start as she always does as the flesh gets closer and closer. You make your way to a bridge, barely escaping the signal tower's true form. And slow-mo ensues as 6 jumps over the bridge as her platform falls beneath her. She turns around ready for a final leap of faith. She catches you. And just sort of lets you hang for a little bit. Until
humming of 6's steam plays as she turns around and leaves without you. Everything you did for her, the times you saved her, the only friend you
had with you betrayed you, left you to die. You wake up amongst the flesh you once tried to escape. When in doubt, travel to the right. A light shines on a chair on a mountain of flesh. You stand on it and look around. The flesh and eyes stare at you and move in closer. Monophobia is the fear of being alone. And here, you are truly and completely alone. You return to a pink light shining on you. The flesh no longer surrounds you, only the walls of the signal tower. The only thing you can do is sit. Music begins to play, like Six's music box, but more ominous and off-putting. Zooms out, and it's the hallway from the TVs. As the door shuts, the light turns more and more pink, like you see when you open the door. The whole thing was a time paradox, and you can't change it. Mono, the thin man, spent all those years building up hatred for Six, hating her for trapping him to this inescapable fate. Here, he is as powerless as Six was when she got captured. He tried to catch Mono to stop him from the fate future him had to endure. He took Six to punish her and keep her away from Mono and Mono away from danger. And with that, the game ends. This whole game has such a powerful story with such an immersing atmosphere, amazing monster designs, and single-handedly, I'm going to say it, the biggest twist in horror game history. The foreshadowing in this game is perfect. The small details, the lighting in the Thin Man's prison, the same powers as Mono make for the perfect ending. This series utilizes emotion so well, getting you attached to the characters you play as, with the lead up to the ending making it all the more impactful in every way. Six goes through all this pain and discovers the awful truth about the prison she found herself trapped in, just to get an incredibly satisfying ending there, killing those who sought her further pain for their selfish gain. For the runaway kid, you played through some very difficult chapters and made friends with the gnomes, making you feel more sympathetic towards him, knowing he's a good person. Making that ending all the more painful knowing what happens to him. Mono, he played as for the longest of the three characters, as this game is the longest. You become attached to him again as he was also a good person, showing Six friendship immediately and doing everything he could to save her. and seeing Six in that horrendous form made us feel so sorry for her, and just as much for Mono having to see his only friend like this. But then, that ending. We resent Six, and her more evil side, shown occasionally in the first game, is even more present now, and seeing what Mono had to go through because of her, we no longer know what to think of Six. She caused both characters' awful fate to occur, but she is just a child, suffering as they were, looking out for herself. It's not her fault her hunger's like this, forcing her to do all this. But then, why did she drop Mono? I saw in a comment section on YouTube somewhere that this was confirmed by a dev, but there is no definite proof of that. But this is the most convincing theory that I personally believe, so I'll go with it. Six saw the Thin Man in Mono's face, as this scene was the first time she actually had a good look at Mono's real face, hence why she kept him hanging for so long. Realizing that he was a Thin Man, her actions are justified in a way. But it makes you think, I would have done that, I would have helped Mono up. But Six is 9 years old, she has experienced hell for this age, she wouldn't know any better. And for a kid to see the person who tortured her in her best friend's eyes, she wouldn't want him waltzing the city with her. But even then, you still hate her for this because you want these characters to have a happy ending, because they deserve it. But in this world, that just isn't what they get.
Okay, so there's this bit of text on the Little Nightmares website or something like that, and I'm gonna read through it because it explains a lot about the ending of Little Nightmares 2, whether that was intentional or not, but pretty sure that's what it's meant for. So I'm just gonna read it out. And that's when you start to see glimpses of it, the face you truly fear, because for the longest time, it's just been the both of you, and even though it was always bad, it was always hard, you worked together and saw each other through. You climbed and ran and hid, and in the end, you survived. But now, when the pulley creaks and wobbles like it might give way, when the yellowed lights snap on without warning, when a shadow looms out of the dark, there's this moment. A moment where you look at your friend, and you see a perfect reflection of your own terror. And you know, without saying a word, that you're both thinking the same thing. We might not live through this nightmare. After all, you're just children. Anyways, to explain how this world works, the signal tower is controlled by the Thin Man, and the signal tower broadcasts to all the TVs, warping the viewers' bodies and faces as shown throughout both games. The viewers are just normal people living in this world and are just addicted to the screens. So much so it makes them forget that they should probably not die. Some people have been warped in different ways and spend their day-to-day life doing regular things like taxidermy, teaching and beating kids, experimenting on patients. And when Mono releases the Thin Man tries to free Mono from the fate he experienced time and time again. But when Mono destroys the Thin Man and the music box, the tower has no one to control it or hide its form as a fleshy organism. Six dropped Mono because that was the first time she saw his face. She saw the Thin Man in Mono's face and she didn't want to be travelling with a man who trapped her and did these things to her. And Mono uses his powers to turn the flesh into a regular building and tower, powering it and surviving off of the dead bodies of the viewers. The signal tower absorbs them, allowing Mono to survive and eventually be freed by himself, ready to get revenge on Six and save himself, only for it all to be in vain. But there's more. You see, the one thing I neglected to mention was that in every chapter there were these things called glitching remains, which kinda look like what remained of Six after the Thin Man captured her. Also, I'm pretty sure these glitching remains represent kids who, unfortunately, died one way or another. Because if you look at the comics for Little Nightmares 2, then there are glitching remains at places where a comic ended, which implied an unfortunate ending for them. And I know this game has had about 7 nooses that you use to progress through the game, but having this glitching remain sit next to one, now knowing what these things represent, in a school environment, I'm not even gonna bother making a joke, like seriously, what the hell? Collect all of them, and you get a secret ending. It shows 6 to the TV. The lights flicker as her soul shows up and looks at a poster on the floor. She disappears, and 6 gets hungry. Her soul was Shadow 6, as revealed by my absolutely horrible foreshadowing earlier. Her only bit of humanity gone now. That poster was of the Moor, and this game is a prequel. She went to the Moor to satisfy her never-ending hunger, and we all know how that story ended. Meaning that we don't know where 6 goes after the first game. She seems to be trapped on the Moor, so I hope that Little Nightmares 3 continues 6's story in some way, as personally I believe that Mono and the Runaway Kids stories are done. And at the time of writing this, November 7th, 2023, the most news we have about Little Nightmares 3 is the 18-minute long gameplay of it that ends so weirdly. It makes no sense to me, but the dust that we see at the end of the video is very similar to the dust that shows up with the lady and 6 with their powers. So I don't really have much else to say about that though, but they did show this very vague screenshot for Halloween. Please let these two have a happy ending, don't let one of them turn into the guests or something. March 11th, 2024, there is no further news of the game. It's been months, Bandai Namco, I am growing impatient. Anyways, at the beginning of the video, I'm talking the very beginning, there was a scene with a character known as the Hanging Man, and some have theorized that this man could be the Thin Man trying to break the cycle. Another pretty good theory, but again, that's really the only evidence of this theory. There isn't much more proving this theory other than that the two characters look similar. It's the same chair that Mono sat on in his prison, although it could just be reusing assets, you never know, and it would make sense. I want to believe it, because although it's sad, it is the best ending for Mono compared to the 50 years of solitary confinement. But I don't think it's true. Little Nightmares isn't a game about happy endings. Even 6's is debatable for whether it's good or not. As bad as it is still a good ending for Mono. So I don't believe it. I do really think that this is the end of Mono's story, trapped in this loop to forever relive the most painful part of his entire life, only to fail to stop the cycle again and again and again. If this is a time loop, then nothing would change every time it repeats, much less he'd make his way to the Moor, specifically the Moor, just to hang himself. It would make more sense in a Pale City, but no, it just doesn't really fit in with the games. Also, another thing, how did 6's raincoat get there? Okay, a while ago, I said that I'd talk about the mobile game, and overall this game is pretty good. But there's one tiny thing that really bothers me. With the mobile game, it comes first on the timeline of games, and there's a character with the yellow raincoat that dies, and with an end credit scene, we see another girl put on the raincoat. We assume this character is 6 because who else could it be? But if it is 6, then how the hell did her raincoat get there in the second game? Because following the timeline, Raincoat Girl dies, 6 gets raincoat, travels to wilderness when we find her, but how does she lose her raincoat? Much less lose it in the middle of the Pale City, which by the way she hasn't even gone to because we had that 5-minute travelling scene on the door across water. Very Little Nightmares I didn't cover because there isn't much scary stuff, it's just chases, nothing all that good horror-wise. Like, Very Little Nightmares, I love you, but at the same time, I hate you. You ruined the bloody timeline of events with that ending of yours, damn it! If you know why this happens, please tell me. I'm sure there's an answer somewhere in the comics or something, but I can't remember any of the comics to be honest, so I don't know. Breaking news, I read the comics, it explained nothing. Despite that though, the comics are really good, so please check them out. All of them in total are no longer than 10 minutes of your time. Please just take a look at it. One other way Little Nightmares 2 handles its horror, this doesn't apply to the first game, are the familiar locations each chapter takes place in. In the first game it was different areas in the same place, all connected in some way, but with Little Nightmares 2, it's all over the place. The forest, the school, hospital, massive flesh amalgamation. They have less obvious connections, and not just with each other but with the Moor too. But in a way, these places are usually comforting outside of this world. The woods can be a place to connect with nature, and some people find happiness there, not me. The school some people enjoy more than home, which I think is why people were most terrified of the school. Not many people have fond memories of school. You think about school and you realize it's Sunday and it's 10 PM. You're not excited to go there tomorrow, making the teacher and students all the more menacing. You were expecting something bad, but it was worse than you could have ever imagined, reminding you that school could have been a lot worse. And the hospital, a safe place you can go to get better. Now a prison with people falling victim to the doctor and being experimented on. This game takes advantages of regular places in people's day-to-day lives and flips expectations of them right on its back, as I have said many times before, making this game feel so unique as a sequel, and just as a horror game in general. The first game doesn't have this effect on its locations, as it is in an area that can never be real. But like I said before, Little Nightmares 2 is an improvement to the first game, and this just adds to that opinion. Also, music. I've mentioned it in scattered parts of this video, but by God I haven't mentioned it enough. This is the best video game OST I have ever heard. I am not exaggerating when I say this. Little Nightmares music on its own has the ability to bring me to tears. It is impossible to put the feeling this music gives me into words, but I will try. Every single track in this game gives such a feeling of dread and shock. Melodies are so memorable and disturbing, usually having a deep, low-pitched instrument repeat a few long notes, completely contrasted by the high-pitched main melody that plays. This is the case for almost every single song. The high-pitched humming in Six's theme, the high-pitched piano in Prison Toys, the music tells so many stories on its own. The low-pitched instruments representing the horrors this world has to offer, all the monsters and the horrible story of this world that's been created, which becomes even more disturbing the more content you see in the game, including the podcast Sounds of Nightmares, which doesn't explain much from the first games, apart from one thing I'll get to, but it does give a further insight into the bigger picture of the world the games take place in, and will probably help the third game make sense when it comes out. Anyways, music. The high-pitched instruments in the music representing the fact that we are playing this game through a child's eyes. The melodies played with these instruments would be happy in any other song with some minor adjustments, but here it represents the little things that seem comforting. But ultimately this comfort is lost upon discovering the story behind it all, hence the melody being so off-putting. Often these melodies are repeated in other songs, like the Prison Toys motif and Togetherness in the second game. Not to mention Six's theme with the humming being in every trailer for every game. Not the exact same motif, but still, it's repeated, and it is very, very iconic. Try to call Little Nightmares the same game without the music. I dare you! It has been revealed though that Tobias Lilja, the original composer for the game, is only affiliated with a little bit of the third game's OST, which isn't the best thing to hear. Imagine with the Cornetto trilogy, it was revealed that Edgar Wright didn't direct The World's End, but Zack Snyder did. Although from the looks of things, the new composer is doing a really, really good job. I just hope that everything in the third game holds up to the previous two games. Whether it does or doesn't, I'll still make a video on it. Also, something Little Nightmares podcast explains according to this video, which I think is pretty cool. There's this character called Otto, who is supposed to be looking after this girl named Noon and helping her, as in the podcast, she's been having nightmares. Otto, at a young age, lost his sister. Like, literally lost her. He doesn't know what happened to her. And he believes that by studying Noon's nightmares, he can find out what happened to his sister, whose name was Cece. As we go throughout the podcast, Otto becomes more and more desperate to find out what happened, caring less about Noon's well-being and mental state and more about knowledge and what happened to his sister. Noon keeps on seeing this character called the Candleman in her nightmares, who is the Little Nightmares equivalent to God, and by the end of the podcast, he takes her to Nowhere, the system of worlds where these games take place. Apparently the Candleman isn't a good character. He lures children like this into this world to torment them and cause them suffering. And in Very Little Nightmares, apparently the character you play as is Cece. Maybe I haven't listened to the podcasts themselves because personally I don't have the attention span for that stuff. And I don't listen to it whilst I'm working on stuff because my mind will wander and I'm not able to focus on the podcast at all. Which is basically just me saying, if any of this information is wrong, it's all this guy's fault, not mine, I swear. And one final question. Why are we scared of Little Nightmares? I guess this question can apply to all horror games, but the answer lies especially well with Little Nightmares as it executes this element so well. The atmosphere. Remember? At the beginning of the video,
I'm sure I mentioned it somewhere else in the video, but I'm writing this on Google Docs on my phone as of the 18th of December, and when I try to use the find and replace system to see how many times I've used the word atmosphere, the whole lot crashes. But the reason why the atmosphere makes us so scared of little nightmares is because of how it's built up. You feel tiny in this world. In the first game, you see the camera swaying because you're on a boat. You don't realize it at the time, but it's always been there. And then it makes sense when you get to that one phenomenal shot and you realize that you have been on a boat this entire time. You feel like you're in this situation your character was put in, and knowing the situation at hand, you wouldn't want to get caught if this actually happened to you. Why would you want it to happen now? Chased by these creatures, hunted till you're caught, the hellish screams the monsters make, the heartbeats, the close encounters, the friends, the events of the story. Little Nightmares is not a game, it is an experience, and I regret not playing the whole thing in full when I first heard of it. But even then, I still love this franchise so much. And of course, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but if I like it just by watching it and barely playing it, then surely someone else can too. And if I got at least one person to appreciate this game for what it is, or help buy and play the game itself, then I did my job. And I'm glad anybody watching this has stuck out till the end. With all that said, I believe we reached the end of this video. First of all, if you made it here, then thank you so much. Most of this video was me recapping the games and talking about them occasionally and why I like it. I'm sure that could have been fairly exhausting for those who played this game already, but I know plenty of people who don't know this game, so if I get more people to like this game and appreciate it more and give it more attention, then I'm happy. Also, just wanted to shout out Pet Brick Productions again, even though I have much less subs than him. He still made an amazing video on both games, which I also highly recommend if you enjoyed this video. These games mean so much to me, and this is by far the longest video I have ever made, and I don't think I'll make a video longer than it either. So if you watch this video to hear my insane ramblings or see what's up with the game, then thank you. This video has been in the works since the 23rd of October 2023, and I'm so glad to finally get it out. I'm so happy I'm able to share my passion with the internet, and if this video falls under the radar, getting sucked into the everlasting abyss, lost to the unforgiving algorithm, I'm gonna be pissed, but what does it matter? I enjoyed making it, and if one viewer enjoys watching it, then that's good enough for me. Plus, ego boost, not many people my age can say they made a 2-hour analysis on their favorite games, can they? Anyways, once again, thank you and have a wonderful day. I'm so glad I finished the script. 16,000 words is a lot. I'm so glad nobody has done something like this, otherwise people would think I'm copying it. God damn it! Okay, I made some changes to the script, and now it's 22,000 words. Okay, either way, I acknowledge Pet Brick Productions' video in this video, so no one will think I stole the idea. Thank God nobody has. Oh, I would like to clarify that I wrote this video in October of 2023. By then, he hadn't even come up with a topic for the video. Some people just work really, really fast. I'm not one of them.